My name is Sharon Hirsch, and today is Tuesday, September 15th, 2020. We are just 7 weeks away from the next presidential election, and we are meeting together each Tuesday to wonder if this could be a season of healing instead of further breaking us into pieces. This week in the news, we're talking about the Bob Woodward book on rage and President Trump, about the Kardashians' end of decades long of reality television in 2021, about fires on the West Coast and the shutdown of John MacArthur's church in California. But is that really what you're thinking about when you drift off to sleep at night or load the dishwasher or are stuck in traffic on your way home from work? We've been talking about the brokenness we really feel in our lives, especially during these times of disappointment, disillusionment, distance, and disconnection. Last week, we compared all this brokenness to a wreck where we crash into our own broken dreams, plans, and hearts. And then we crash into one another with the shards of our life reflected in our continued debating, dividing, and demeaning one another that we can't seem to get away from, no matter what the topic. I've had a few wrecks in my life. Last week, I talked about learning I had COVID-19 back in March. I've also crashed into alcoholism and hurt myself and others. I've crashed into gossip that brought a cloud of darkness over me and was relationally violent toward others. I've crashed into doubt and ended up lost, losing my bearings on how to find my way back. Once we realize the surface of our lives, or more painfully, the places deep down inside where we really live, that we're cracking, breaking into pieces, much like a piece of glass I asked you to break 2 weeks ago and collect in a jar of dust and broken pieces. Once you realize you have shattered hope, finances, health, relationships, even faith, what glue do you use to put the brokenness back together? Go ahead and get your jar of dust and broken pieces. If you don't have it with you, you can do this later. But pour out all that dust and broken pieces on a flat surface. Go ahead, I'll wait. Now try, or imagine trying, to put it all back together. My restoration should look something like this if I was going to put it back in its original condition. The impossible task of making everything look unbroken is what we take on when we believe the goal of life is for everything to go well, look good, and be intact. We have different glues to put it back together. For some, it's like my choice a few years ago of alcohol, pleasure. It could be food or buying something on Amazon. These behaviors have increased by 70% since the pandemic. We're either trying to fix all this brokenness or to feel numb to it. And the statistics will keep going up because the glue of pleasure disappears pretty quick. We need more tomorrow. We may hope to put things back together with a little power and control. If our side could just win the election, we'll be okay. And the ends justify the means of debating, disagreeing, even disparaging one another. The glue of power and control is more slippery than we realize at first. Because no matter who wins the election, some part of our lives will slip out of our grasp again. We may try to glue our lives together with work and busyness. This glue leaves us frustrated because we never really get a break from its annoying grip on our lives. There's always more to do. We may seek to put ourselves together with relationships, a new love, someone who applauds us or needs us, someone who agrees with us, especially during these days, if they at least have the same enemies as us. This glue is always disappointing. There is not enough of anyone to put us back together. Finally, we may try to glue ourselves together with some sort of spirituality that involves health, fitness, diet, a surefire belief system that will protect us from the cracks of our flaws and vulnerabilities. This glue glues us to rules, programs, behaviors. Legalism always leaves us hopeless. In the end, we just can't be enough to save ourselves with ourselves. Well, this doesn't all sound like very good news about brokenness, does it? No wonder we fixate on the Kardashians, especially if you're hanging on for a little hope in these days. But Rex can be a relief when we realize we cannot put ourselves back together. We cannot save ourselves. We cannot rescue ourselves. We need a rescuer. And letting go of trying to fix or hide all our brokenness, we may discover its meaning and find God Himself sitting right there in the ruins of our lives. Here is what all that brokenness can reveal about us. Number one, we are all broken. We all suffer from the same condition. And even the brokenness breaks us further as we try to piece together our lives with people, places, things, ideologies. We want to take care of this brokenness on our own. We don't want to be vulnerable about the broken edges, how we've been hurt, how we've hurt ourselves and others. This means we don't have to trust anyone. Number two, we especially don't want to trust God. Number three, when we don't depend on God or others, we have to trust ourselves to find a way to control all this brokenness. This is a never ending treadmill that leaves us exhausted, guarded, afraid, and ashamed. And number four, we all know deep down inside, something needs to change in us before we will be able to be in the restoration of brokenness. So, what needs to change in us? Not in the world, but in us to be ready for a rescue story. Number one, if pleasure is your glue to put everything back together, stop, or at least try stopping. Drinking too much, eating too much, spending too much. Once those false glues are gone, how satisfying do you feel with your life? If power and control are the ways you feel hopeful, try this. Certainly learn all you can and make your choices in accordance with your values about this next election. And then pray, God, your will be done. How much peace do you have when you decide to let go of the end result and dare to believe God is in control? Is your future dependent on who is elected on November 3rd? Number three, if work and busyness keep you from noticing the brokenness in you or the world, take 5 minutes every morning this week to note your frustrations. Is your future dependent on who's elected on November 3rd in order to work out those frustrations? I mean, how well is your work and busyness working for you? Number four, if relationships are the hope of your life, okay, imagine staying in a relationship, even if they leave you, disappoint you, or don't love you back. How nourished do do you really feel by relationships? And number 5, finally, if some sort of spirituality is your glue, it's your rightness, your exclusive group where everyone thinks the same and believes the same, your superior insights. Ask yourself how connected you really feel to your family and friends. If you weren't joined in common enemy intimacy or common rightness relationships, how lonely would you be? When we really stop, tell the truth about our lives and the ways we try to make them okay and the ways we really aren't okay, it might feel a little uncomfortable. Sometimes we need to experience an absence to be ready for a presence. I challenge you to think about these things and see if you're ready for a shift, both on the surface of your life and deep down inside. Are you ready for a rescuer? How do we find rescue? And how do we experience rescue in a world that keeps breaking? We will talk about that next week. Oh, and put the dust and broken pieces back in your container. We're not done yet.